What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Finding Direction podcast. This week, I'm sitting down with my man, Shamawn Wright. And a little bit about Shamawn. He is the founder of a company called Bridge Builders, where they help people in underserved communities bridge the gap from lower education to higher education to really start doing more things with their life. He is also a motivational speaker. And on this episode, a few of the things we talk about are how taking responsibility is the first step to changing your current situation. All right, we also talk about the 3 things you can do to instantly begin changing the narrative of yourself. And we dive into a lot of other things as far as really what Shamawn went through growing up from a pretty rough childhood to really now creating an incredible life for himself. I know you're going to enjoy this. Shamawn brings so much value. And without further ado, we are going to dive in. Shamawn Wright, welcome to the podcast, man. I am looking forward to our conversation.
Me too, man. I'm looking forward to, man. Like I said once before, man, I just thank you so much just for this time. Just hitting me up, reaching out to me, and just this time for us to fellowship and talk. I'm looking forward to this, man. I can't wait.
Absolutely, man. And I'm excited to dive into your life, your story, man. And so, as we kind of kick off your journey and your story of how you got to where you are today, I would love it if you could start by kind of filling us in a little bit as far as like what was life like for little Shamawn as you were, a little tyke running around doing whatever you're doing over in Antioch, California.
Life for me was very confusing. It was very traumatic. As a Black male, I didn't know who I was growing up in this world. I started off in Oakland, California, and being in Oakland, a lot of times growing up in poverty, and I grew up in poverty, low income housing. But to tell you the truth, when I first started off, I had 2 parents. I have 6 brothers, and we grew up in a nice household and a nice family. And my dad was a recovering alcoholic, ended up getting out of prison. And in that process, something triggered my father where he ended up reverting back to what he was used to and accustomed to. Ended up leaving my mom, ended up going back on drugs, in and out of jail, prison. And in that process, because I didn't have a Black male role model to show me what it was like to be a Black man, I let everything else outside influence me. So I let my community influence me. I let the media show me what a successful Black male looks like. And so from that point of view, I was constantly trying to figure out who I was. And so I was an athlete growing up. I started playing sports at the age of 7. I started playing sports at the age of 4. My first sport that I played was baseball. And then from that point, I ended up going to football, running track. But in that process, because we grew up in poverty, we grew up in low income housing, grew up in the projects, I was trying to understand who I was, understand my community, understanding how to survive in this community. And so when I looked at people in my community that were making money and being able to help support their family, like some of my friends, I was like, okay, well, I need to make money. So how can I make money? And because I ended up doing that, I ended up committing a crime, ended up going to juvenile hall, right? And even in that process of me going to juvenile hall, I was still trying to understand my identity, right? And what's going on in my life. Like I knew in that process, I couldn't be like my father. I knew I had to change something. So I struggled so much academically because I went through so much traumatic experiences. Like my cousin got killed right in front of me when I was at the age of 10. I lost a lot of friends. I witnessed a lot. We were in and out of homeless shelters. I saw my mom get arrested right in front of us. And when my mom got arrested right in front of us, and me and my brothers had to go to a group home, I remember when we were in that group home, and I remember a time where we were sitting there and I was crying, right? And in that process, when I was crying, I knew nobody was coming to get us, right? And so when nobody came to get us is when I had to take ownership and accountability for my life. And so because of that, ended up landing me in juvenile hall, ended up landing me getting kicked out of schools. I struggled academically, like I said once before. And I ended up, like I said, in that moment, I ended up finding out who I was. And when I got out of juvenile hall, I remember a specific time and a specific moment where I was sitting on this air mattress, right? And I was sitting on this air mattress and we were sleeping on the floor at my mom's friend's house. and I saw my earth science book in the corner. And so when I saw that book, I ended up just opening up that book to just start my homework. And I ended up doing my homework. And from that, I went from a zero point 0.0 to a 4.0, and I think the rest was here history. Now, I hope as we go throughout the process, we could go ahead and talk a little bit more about how, by me just sitting down and doing my homework and not thinking about any reward or anything attached to it, just taking it day by day, transpired to where I'm at right now.
Interesting. Interesting, man. So there's, a lot of different things we can dive into. One thing I would love to hear from your perspective. I've been fortunate enough not to have a crazy amount of death around me in my life. I am grateful for it every single day, that it's like I haven't had as many of those experiences where, people say someone close to you dies and it's like it just changes your perception in a sense. And I've had other experiences that have, altered the way I look at life. But I'm curious for you, like, I don't know if at 10, if there was something that clicked, or just, throughout growing up and seeing death be almost like normalized.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are some of the main things that you've taken from that maybe show up in your life, like daily now?
So I think it's a gift and it's a curse, because what I tell a lot of people is like, and I hear this from people like Wallow. I don't know if you heard of Wallow, 267 Wallow, but he's a motivational speaker as well. But he said that you have to sometimes go insane to stay sane. And what happened was I ended up turning off my emotions and how I felt in those moments, because I knew if I sat there and I cried for a day, for a second, for a minute, or if I slowed down or I said, this day is not my day, so let me just take a step back, and let me feel these emotions, I probably wouldn't have made it out of my situation. And so I had to go to a place where I had to turn off my emotions and how I was feeling, because I knew that tomorrow was going to be another day. Like every single day the sun goes up and it goes down, right? And time waits for no man. So I knew at an early age that I realized that this was normalized in my community. It was normalized in my home. And there was no way that I could escape it, because I couldn't control it, right? I couldn't control what was going on around me or anything. I just knew that I could only control two things. That was my attitude and that was my effort. And so every single day as I was growing up, I feel like a key part for me dealing with like death was feeling abandoned, feeling like anybody that entered my life will leave one day. And I knew that when I was in the group home at the age of 9, and when nobody came to get me, that's when something clicked. Like, you came into this world by yourself and you're going to leave here by yourself. And when I was crying and I was hoping that someone was going to rescue me from that moment, no one did, is when I was like, okay, I'm going to take my bike to practice every day. I'm not going to ask nobody for a ride. I'm going to wake up, catch the bus. I'm going to do everything that I got to do to put myself in a position to win.
That's crazy to hear you say that, because when I hear you talk about that at 9, I had a similar experience when I was 19.
Yeah.
Where like I was running my own business at the time, and it was a moment of realization where it was like, if I am successful in my life, it's my fault. But on the flip side, if I'm a failure, it's also my fault. And it's like, I think once you can take like accountability for your life and like what your life looks like, it's like, you know what I mean? You could go through life and go, well, I was dealt bad cards, or, I'm not at the right job that I want to be, or my business isn't successful, or I'm not happy. And it's like, but if you take a moment and say, wait, if I'm successful, it's my fault. And if I'm unsuccessful, it's my fault. If I'm happy, it's my fault. If I'm unhappy, it's my fault. If I'm depressed, it's my fault. Like, the moment once you take responsibility, I think the most powerful thing about it is then you realize that you now have the power to change it. Right? Where it's like, you are 9 years old, like, I'm going to go back to practice because I got it. It's on me. Right. And it's like, once you make that decision, and it sounds like this is what happened for you at 9. I know this is what happened for me at 19. When I made that decision, everything in my life has changed since that day, because I made the decision to finally take responsibility for my life, for my results, and for, like what every day looks like.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that right there is big because just by you even saying like just being able to take responsibility and and I look at a lot of people that either my students or I look at people in my family and a lot of times people aren't able to take that type of responsibility or ownership over their life, or over anything that they do, whether it's their education, whether it's their job. People are always looking for somebody to give them a handout.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because I actually had a talk with my student in regards to that. And he was mad at me because he told me that he feels like I'm not supporting his dream. Like he told me he wants to do his business or he wants to like start selling t-shirts and merchandise. And I had to check him and I had to be like, look, this is your dream, right? You have to act like nobody's coming to save you. Like nobody is going to give you a handout. And it's so crazy because that mindset that I had at 9 and the way I move now as an adult and
Yeah.
knowing that nobody's coming to save me, nobody's going to pour into my business or nobody's going to give me a grant or I'm going to get these contracts. When I had that type of vision, that drive to be like, this is me. And what happened was people started coming into my business. Like, I have like people that are really wealthy that's a part of my board, right? That I could have never envisioned. Like, if you would have
Yeah.
told me at the age
Yeah.
of when I got out of juvenile hall, if you'd have told me that just by me sitting there and doing my homework would have turned to me sitting in front of this Bank of Commerce in Pleasanton, California, at a round table presenting my business. That just took that because I just sat there and did my homework and not thinking about that. Okay, if I do this, then this is going to happen. If I do this. I didn't even care about that. I just knew that if I pour some positive energy, if I do something good and I work hard at it, then something good has to come out of that.
Facts. Facts. Love it, man. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
if we jump a little more forward in your story, so you go to juvenile hall,
Mhm.
and it sounds like again you kind of have one of these moments where something snaps in you and you start to realize, okay, I got to change something, right? It's like the classic cliche where it's like if you want things to change, you must change. And you had one of those moments where it was like, okay, it's not that, it's like it's me. And so I'm curious for you, like, what were some of the shifts and changes you started to make coming out of that really started to help you getting, to where you are even today?
So I think, and hopefully I could get later on to this part called that I reference are this like 3 morals that I live by in regards to change the narrative. And so in that process of me being incarcerated is I'm very observant of people's circumstances, situation. And so in that process, when I was there, I remember getting up one day, looking at myself in the mirror and asking myself, do I want to be here for the rest of my life? And when I ended up doing that, and I went downstairs, and it was towards the evening, and I remember this brother that was in there, and he was like, man, like he was laughing. He said, "What you in here for?" And I told him what I was in there for, and he said, "Man, you don't want to be real criminals like us." And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And he's like, this is my 4th time in here. This is my 5th time in here.
Damn.
I got this many years, or I got this however many times. And I'm sitting there like, it's so crazy that their minds are captive to just this small portion of their environment. And because they're not able to see anything outside their environment is why they're stuck there. And I realized that that's the same thing that happened to my biological father. He ended up getting, sent to juvenile hall at the same time I got sent to juvenile hall. So in that process was like, I got to change the narrative and I got to change something
Mm.
about my life that's going to set me up for success. And what I was doing was not setting me up for success. So not going to school, not doing my homework, hanging around with people that had all F's, right? If I hang around folks that have all F's, why do I feel like I'm going to be that only person to get all A's? If they don't go
For
to class, why
sure.
do I feel like I'm going to go to class? And so it
Yeah.
was in that moment where I had to realize that I got to change the people that surrounded me and get around people that want to be better, right? And
Yeah.
so I feel like in that moment is where I realized, like, something like I got to sit here and I got to change my environment in order for me to change the narrative.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I feel like it's like that's one of the most powerful ways to change your perception of life, your actions, your beliefs, like everything consciously and unconsciously. Because if you start to put yourself around people even in this example, to get A's, like they show up differently in their life. They think differently. They
Yeah.
expect to get an A, which maybe even just the expectancy of getting an A. It's like that's a different, it's like you, because sometimes it's like, oh, I have this thought or this belief that's not serving me in my life and I need to change it. But if we try to just change it on our own, it's much harder than if we get around a group of people that already have those beliefs that we want, because they're going to naturally push us into that place. And also, if we don't have those beliefs and we want to fit in with this crowd, like survival of the fittest, we're gonna learn those behaviors so that we can stick around in this crowd. So it's cool that you had that at a young age, and I'm curious to hear from you. So what is, you were talking about the narrative and your morals and kind of shaping some of these things. So fill us in on what those three things were, if you would.
So when it comes to changing the narrative, right? So I kind of viewed it and I broke it down this way. In order for people to change the narrative, the first thing that they have to do, they have to reevaluate their environment. They have to reevaluate the people that they circle themselves with. If people aren't serving your purpose, are not bringing value to your life, then why are they truly in your life? Right? So reevaluating who are you with, because if you are surrounded in an environment where people cannot see past their environment and cannot have a futuristic mindset, you're going to be stuck and hold captive to that environment. That's the first thing. The second thing is that people have to be comfortable in uncomfortable territories or in uncomfortable situations, right?
Amen.
Because a lot of times the life that we want is there in uncertainty. Like the life that we want is in the unknown. And so you have to be in a position where you're trying to take that risk that people don't usually want to take. And the only way you're going to do that is going back to the first one, is changing that environment, right?
Yeah.
And then the third one is that people have to understand, we talked about this just not too long ago, but you are the author of your own book, right? Like you get to write this story. Like maybe what you went through as a child was tough and was hard, but a lot of that was never in your control because that was based off of somebody else's actions,
Yeah.
but as you get older, everything you do, you're accountable for. You can't sit here and be like, well, my relationship is struggling. I'm with this person. I'm struggling every single time. And every relationship you're in is like a continuous cycle. And it's like, that now, and you want to blame the trauma that you went through. It's like, you have to do something about that, right? If you feel like something is a continuous cycle, you have to sit there and be like, okay, well, I've been through a lot of trauma. Am I going to get the help necessary for me to excel in that? Right? We can't sit here and do
Yeah.
the blame game on, my life is hard. And because my life is hard, and because I lost my mother, I lost my father, I lost any of that. And I understand that's hard. Right. And that's going to come with this other differences, are going to come with some other challenges. But the thing is that we have to understand that we write our own story. Right. What you went through at that specific moment is just a chapter in your life. Right now, from chapter 1, what's chapter 2 going to look like? What's chapter 3 going to look like?
Right.
Right. And all we want to see is progression all the way through. So those are the 3 morals that I live by when I talk about changing narrative.
Love it, man. Love it, love it, love it. Right. So it's your environment first and foremost. Be willing to get uncomfortable,
Yeah.
which on this podcast, that is our peanut butter and jelly. That's our jam. You
Yeah.
gotta get uncomfortable. And then third is understand you're the author of your own book, right?
Yeah.
And I think one thing that's interesting is you speak about that too, is it's like the power of focus dictates the direction that we move in our life, right? And it's like, for example, you could be in a for lack of a better term, crappy situation.
Mhm.
And if all you're focusing on is, well, that's the situation I came from, that's what happened to me, this, that, and the other,
Yeah.
where your focus is on not a good place,
Most
right?
definitely. Yep.
And so where you're going to start to go more now is to not a good place, because that's where your focus is. But if you can say, okay, this stuff happened and it's not good, it does not help me in my life, it was like, this is unfortunate that I had to go through this, but the focus of where I want to go is in this completely other direction. And yeah, that stuff that happened, but like my focus is I want to get to that place over there, just by simply shifting the focus, right? And like, yeah, stuff may not be in your favor, stuff may have been bad, but if you just don't even focus on that for a moment and you focus on where you want to go,
Yeah.
naturally things are going to shift insanely in your life just because of the simple focus shift.
Yep. Yeah. I'm going to share a story with you, because
Yeah.
bringing up focus is is literally why I'm here right now. Why I have 3 different businesses. Why I'm in my doctorate program right now, getting my doctorate. The thing that happened was in 2019 was one of those situations where I was uncomfortable. I lost my job. I lost my job. My relationship with my lady was going bad. I my bank account was negative $2,000. I ended up going to early prevention rehab because it was in that moment where I lost my job, where I realized that something has to change because everything was a cycle. It was like every relationship I was ever in was like a circle.
Mm.
And I was like, I have to do something different so this doesn't happen. And so because I ended up going to early prevention rehab, and that allowed me to be sober for about 2 years and allow me to focus and understand my emotions, my feelings, and what I wanted to do in life. And when I did that is actually when I started my first business, Bridge Builders to the New Generation.
Let's go.
And in my darkest moments is what came the best inventions and ideas. And
Yeah.
so I focused on that. And then I ended up going back to school to get my master's. And when I got my master's, because I had okay, I'm trying to understand who I am. I'm over here growing as a person. I am putting all of my efforts and energy to stay away from the things that I feel like is being disruptive in my life. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to focus on this dream. I'm going to focus on this business. And I got my master's. Never in my life would I thought I would have got my doctorate. But like I said, when you
Yeah.
put yourself in an environment, when people speak life into you, is what happened to me. When I was getting my master's, people used to call me Dr. Wright all the time. And because someone spoke that in the atmosphere, what happened was my spirit ended up just holding on to that, grasping that. And that's what happens with anything. That's what happened with my
Yeah.
business. That's what happened with anything that I have done because I put myself in an environment where people spoke so much life into me. And because I was able to focus is the reason why I'm really here,
Mm.
thriving and doing motivational speaking, having two other businesses,
Yeah.
being in my doctorate program. But that thing about focus is key because a lot of times it's like when we're able to focus on what we want to do and try to remove the things that are distracting us or that's holding us back out of our life, that's the time where we're going to see a lot of growth and separation.
Yeah. So real. And I mean, we could just go back and forth all day, but it's like you were saying too, it's like people that speak life into you, right? I think it's
Mhm.
like for anyone that's listening to this, it's asking yourself right now, it's like, do you have people that, as you say what you want to do with your life, they're pouring into you and they're building you up and they're encouraging you? Or do you have people around you that are trying to drag you down or trying to not encourage you? Or, and you want to kind of take an audit there and ask yourself, are you around the right people? And if you're not, find a way to get yourself in the right environment.
Yep, exactly. Not and like you said, we go back and forth, but it's like just the saying that misery loves company. Everybody's cool with you when you are all equal. Everybody loves you when you're all equal.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily believe in people that are haters. I just feel like a lot of people are misguided and not able to see and have that mindset of being futuristic of what you want to do, right? And so when you start elevating, a lot of times people will talk bad about you. People will not support you like you feel like they should support you. Nobody in this world, I wouldn't say nobody, but I'll say most people in this world, when you start something, people will laugh at you. You won't see the likes like you want to see the likes. People will sit there and repost what you're selling, if it's merchandise, if it's your business, if it's you doing
Yeah.
some motivational speaking, whatever it is, they'll share for a short period of time. But what you see is nobody supports you. But the time that you elevate and you get to a level, now you see the people that want to clap, the people that want to cheer, the people that want to say, I always believed in you. Oh, I know
Yeah.
that person. But it's like a lot of times people aren't able to see the things that we see, right? And sometimes we have to be okay with that, right? Like it's our
Yeah.
vision, it's our dream, it's our goal. Like nobody can see or nobody's brain is operating or moving the way my brain is
Right.
moving, right? And that's with all of us. Like no matter how inspirational we are, no matter how motivated we are, like we all think differently, and it's like people sit there and they sit in there stuck in their bubble and they're not able to expand the dream or expand their vision, then they're going to sit there and they're going to try to pull you down with them all the time.
Yeah. Straight up, man. So if we jump into bridge builders for a second, Obviously here you're helping people in underserved communities, kind of get the tools, the resources, like the things they need to really go in the right direction in life rather than being pulled in some things it's not going to take them in the right place.
Yeah.
And I would be curious if you could share with us, like, what are, and I know before this you were doing some mentoring programs with them,
Hmm.
but I would be curious to hear from you, like, what would you say are two or three maybe like core things you really want to ingrain into them that are like, if you only get these one, two, three things from bridge builders, like I know you're going to start going in the right direction in your life. Like, what are those type of, whether it's resources or things you share with them, or, you know what I mean? What are those tools that
So,
people need?
so with our students, the first thing that I always have them do and talk about is understanding who they are, right? And people talk about this all the time as well, but understanding your why. And sometimes our why could be flawed. And I had to tell my students this as well, because I had a dream of going to the NFL. And it was because I thought that I really loved football and I really was passionate about playing in the NFL one day. But when I really broke that down and I understood that my why was I really wanted my biological father to see me play on Sundays because
Mm,
I felt abandoned. I felt alone. I wanted him to see that I was worth it. So I always try to tell my students, like, you have to really understand your why and
mm,
break that down. The next thing that I tell them is that they have to be accountable for any and everything you do. There's consequences to it. And any type of wrong, even if you feel like you're in the right, you had some wrong in that. And you have to own that. Like you could be sitting here like saying that person's wrong, that person's wrong, that person's wrong. They might be wrong to more extent than you are, but at the end of the day, you still had something that you could have changed in that situation or the circumstance for it not to escalate like this.
yeah.
Then the next thing that I always tell my students all the time is you hear a lot of people say this: you need a plan B, right? You need a plan C, you need a plan D, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't tell them that. What I tell them is that you have to expand the dream, right? You have to learn to expand the dream and expand the vision. And what does that mean? If you want to go to the NFL, if you want to be a professional athlete, that's going to be for a small period of your life. In that process, what are you doing to make sure when that is over that you are expanding your dream? So if that is getting into being an entrepreneur, right? Finding something that you love to do, finding something you like. And that's something that I try to implement. And there's another thing that I know I'm already, but there's another thing that I tell my
Yeah.
students all the time is that your life, the way you all envision your 20s and your 30s, I want you to understand a lot of that stuff's not going to work out the way you think it's going to work out. Your 20s is a time where you have to explore what you want to do in your life. Like that's a time where you get to sit there and be like, I want to try this. Oh, I
Yeah.
messed up. This didn't work out for me. Let me go ahead and do this. Like that's a time where you have to be greedy and you have to have a grit about you. You have to have a hunger about you. And you have to figure that out in your 20s and even your 30s. And what happens is a lot of times my students end up, a lot of times when I sit there and I ask them, like, what do you want to do when you get older? Oh, I want to be a professional athlete. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a doctor. I want to be. And so it seems like it's a very routine, systematic train of thought of,
Yeah.
oh,
For
this
real.
is in our society. This is what everybody in education, because just understanding what education is designed for is not designed to allow you to think for yourself. So because they're sitting there and they're like,
No.
I want to do this, I want to do that, you know what I'm saying? But it's like, if there was no money attached to what you want to do,
Yeah.
what is that you want to do? Like, what do you love to do? And they're like, well, Mr. Wright, I love what you do. I said, okay. I said, you could go ahead and do the same thing I'm doing, right? I said, I love working with y'all every single, like when I go to work, when I go here, I love it. And the
Yeah.
thing about it is that we're expanding, we're moving, we're, growing at a fast rate. Like we started in 2019. And mind you, it was a pandemic in 2020,
Yeah.
and we already are at 3 schools right now. And next school year, we'll be at 5 schools, right? And that's just for those. I'll say this is really after 1 year of us showing the work that we have done, right? And just showing the importance
Right.
of being here. So I try to tell my students all the time is that don't try to limit yourself to what our society says success looks like. I want you to explore what you love to do, and whatever you love to do, what's going to happen is your purpose, God's going to end up expanding that to so many different ideas, and you're going to sit there and follow and navigate it. But if you sit here and you say, okay, I want to be a lawyer, you become a lawyer, you hate it.
Yeah.
Now you feel stuck because you spent, I don't know how many years in school you spent just trying to be a lawyer, and now you feel stuck because you don't even know if you can get out this situation. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people feel trapped.
Yeah. It is interesting. It's a beautiful question, right? Like if you didn't think about money, well, then what would you do? It's like I could visualize seeing the kids in that moment where they're like, oh wait, okay, well then and they're like, well then this and that and this and the other, and it's like such a different answer, but it's again kind of because of the way society sort of like forms us to think in a certain way, not rather than thinking for ourselves. And it's like one of the greatest skills you can have in the world is thinking, right? Like knowing how to think, thinking your own, like, and learning that ability will change your life. And so, Shamawn, man, I'm curious, obviously you're doing a lot of incredible things in the world. If people want to see what you're up to, how to get a hold of you, just, follow along in your journey, what's the best way for them to find you and everything you're up to?
So I'll say the best thing to find me will be on Instagram. I'm on Instagram all the time. So I post motivational videos every single day. But it's s._Wright. That is my personal Instagram. My business Instagram, if you want to see what we're doing in the community, is Bridge Builders NG. That's our Instagram. And so you can either find us on with my personal one, or you can also go ahead and look at our business Instagram as well.
Solid, man. Cool. So last question I have for you. We ask this to all of our guests because we want to help people find direction, but we believe in doing it through action. And so I would be curious for you, what would you say is one thing someone listening to this can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
I say you have to look at your environment. You have to look at the people in your environment and understand that these people are generally trying to pour life into me. If you're sitting there every single day and you're talking to your friend on the phone about some drama, right? Is that person really helping you? And I'm not saying cut these people off. I'm not saying get rid of them or eliminate them. But what I'm saying is sometimes you cannot spend all of your energy in that specific area. If every single night your spouse just wants to sit on the couch and watch TV and you're not able to grow and develop, right? Is that person really there to help you grow and thrive in life? And so you have to constantly ask yourself, you have to look at the people close to you and ask yourself, is this person helping me or trying to help me develop and get me to where I want to be in life? Like, are you happy? If you're happy in your life, totally fine. Go ahead. That's totally fine. But if you are confused and you feel like there's more life out there for you, these are the questions that you have to have with yourself. And I just remember this, and I'm going to leave with this. But when my high school football coach ended up adopting me, he ended up taking me in. And when he took me in, he one of my best friends who actually died last year, he called me and he said, man, Shamawn, we about to get in this fight. Come pull up. I went to my high school football coach and I told him in his own house, I said, Coach Pika, can you take me to where my friends is at because they're about to fight? He said, well, Shamawn, if you leave this house, you can never come back. And I remember looking in the bedroom and I saw a bed, I saw a TV, and I made the decision to stay in that house. And if I didn't stay in that house, I probably would have ended up dead or in prison. So understanding that the hardest decision was for me to let my friends down. But I knew I couldn't give this opportunity up. And I was aware of the opportunity that presented itself to me. So those are the things that I would tell you is to reevaluate your environment and see if the people around you are really serving your life and your purpose.
Love it. Awesome, man. Well, Shamawn, thank you so much for coming here, brother. It's been a joy to hear your story, your journey, and thank you for the wisdom, my man.
Appreciate you, Stu, man. You have a blessed day. Like I said, thank you so much for this opportunity, man. I really do appreciate it, and it does not go unnoticed.
Absolutely, man.